I'm Void.
And I'm Beej.
And together, we're the Geek to Geek podcast. Well, we make it. It is kind of us, but I guess it's separate.
Every week, we pick a topic from geek or digital culture and chat about it for a while.
And you're invited. We talk about books and movies, games, comics, the internet.
Or really whatever we feel like.
Yeah, that too.
So look for the Geek to Geek podcast on iTunes.
Or wherever your podcasts are sold, or downloaded, or whatever.
Meanwhile, on the comic box.
Bop-a-doo, bop-a-doo. Da ba ba da bop bop da ba da bop ba da bop doo da for where da ba da 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 meow.
Wee diddly bop doo dip diddly pow.
Comics. Hey everyone, welcome to the Comic Box, part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. I am Rob, your friendly neighborhood comic geek. I am joined once more by the laudatory Liam O'Rourke. Hi, Liam.
Hello, Rob.
Our word of the week is laudatory, meaning full of or giving praise.
Oh, I was hoping it had something to do with being addicted to laudanum.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, which really, this would have worked as a better adjective last week with Logan, as of the full of or giving praise, but...
That's true. I kind of gave all my praise last week.
Yeah, I pull these basically out of a hat. I go to a website that lists them, and you have to click on the word to find out the meaning. So I just click on a word, and so long as it's not completely out there, as in not able to describe you at all. But I got the lake one, I thought, last time was pretty good.
Yeah,
anyway,
that one works.
This week, we're going to take a look behind the curtain at comic book distribution up until the digital age. This was something that Void from the Geek to Geek podcast sent me, saying he was curious to know more about, because he has always kind of gotten his comics digitally and was curious how the normal paper sort of thing works, and this idea that there's actually a monopoly out there and nobody really cares because it's comics. But we'll get into that. First, though, the weekly geekery. I'm going to go first this time. I always ask Liam. Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it too, because I'm looking at my outline, and I listed myself first because I'm the one that puts the outline together.
Rampant, unchecked egomaniac.
That's me. As far as stuff that I am reading, I am up to issue 50 of Invincible. I'm enjoying it. It is very much a nicer sort of light read. I mean, there's some heavy stuff in there. You know, there's deaths of characters and that sort of thing. That's a nice thing about it being an image book. It's not ruled by the major Marvel DC thing where all characters that die inevitably come back. So I'm enjoying that. And then on the Hoopla app as well, I read the first volume of Descender by Jeff Lemire. I'm not sure how that's pronounced.
Lemire?
What's that?
I don't know.
Yeah. With art by Dustin Nguyen. And this is one that I've seen on a lot of people's lists, one that people are throwing out there a lot. It's a really good sci-fi book. The general plot is humanity has android helpers, and then there's a war, the robots, kind of the usual thing, and then this takes place afterward when there's this confederation of planets, and in general they get rid of all of their robots. And on this mining colony, this little boy robot wakes up after being turned off for several years, and then it sort of goes into what happens to this little boy robot who knows he's a robot, but for all intents and purposes was a member of this family because he was purchased and sent there as a companion to the child of a family that was there on this mining colony.
A replicant?
No, it's more like, because replicants are in all ways meant to be human and look human and act human. These aren't that close. Like, he's able to shoot a blast out of his arm every once in a while as a defensive mechanism and can interface with machines and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I think probably more along the lines of AI.
Oh, that's too bad.
Except this does not have the whole Pinocchio, I want to be a real boy thing.
Does it have robot prostitution?
That I don't know. Sorry.
Well, look into it.
Yeah, I'll do that just for you, Liam. I also started reading the book Monstrous on Hoopla by Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda. The thing that drew it to me was the artwork, just seeing the cover of it. Like, it's incredibly detailed, incredibly beautiful art, and it's kind of an interesting story. This is also a story that takes place after a war, but it's between humans who then have, like, witches on their side versus magical creatures, most of whom are, like, look like a normal person but with wings, or they're a cross between a fox and a human being, or there's wolf people, that sort of thing. And so at some point there was a war, and this is what happens after, and it follows this character who sort of got caught up in the war, and her mother was killed, and she's just trying to figure out her origins, and she's missing an arm, but her body is inhabited by this super ancient evil demon that comes out and needs to feed every once in a while by like eating people and stuff. So it's a gorgeous looking book, very much for adults, just because of the language and the graphic nature of both the violence, and then there's a little bit of nudity in there as well. So not a book for kids.
Won't somebody think of the children?
Somebody think of the children. Yeah, so I'm not going to quite recommend it yet because I haven't finished reading the volume that we're going to... Oh, and there's also Cats That Talk that have multiple tails.
Well, of course.
And they're like poets and scientists. Like, cats are apparently the keepers of history.
Yeah, I'd believe it.
Yeah, it's weird. As far as things I'm watching, just Young Justice. I'm almost done to the end of season 1 of Young Justice. That's what I've been watching on my lunch breaks and stuff. Playing, I've been just Overwatch. I played a little bit of Tom Clancy's The Division, but otherwise I've been playing Overwatch. I got another round in with Professor Beej from the Geek to Geek podcast this morning. That was fun. Hi, Beej. We did terribly. We lost just awfully, but it was still fun. Beyond that, I've started doing these like Facebook Live piano things where if I'm working from home and I decide to take a break from work and just play piano, I throw it up on Facebook Live because I figure somebody's probably going to enjoy watching that, you know, like why not? And if you don't, like I never have more than maybe 3, 4, or 5 people watching at any given time, but for an hour or whatever, if I'm just playing piano, I just let my Facebook friends watch. So I don't know if that's a thing I'll ever put out on the Twitter feed or anything like that. Probably not. I don't even know if it's a thing where I'll save the Facebook Live videos afterward. But that's what I've been up to. How about you, Liam? What's your weekly geekery for us?
It's been a little light this week. Just playing some Rocket League, as usual. Crotch, Niblet, you know. I did a little bit of trading with some pop vinyls this week.
Getting into the trading biz.
Yeah, there's a very good and very lively Facebook group devoted to it, as well as a subreddit, and I'm a member on both, so I have made a few deals here and there. Recently, this week, I acquired a Mulder and Scully, so...
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I consider myself an X-File. I can appreciate that.
Yeah. Now, it also has the Cigarette Smoking Man, which is one that I would like to get, and then there's an Alien, which I, don't feel the need to pick up, but I would like to one day get that Cigarette Smoking Man, but I think he's maybe a little pricey, but I have to check.
Yeah, he wrote a book. I have that saved on my Hoopla thing, since it's not just comic books from the library, it's all sorts of different media. And there's a book that he wrote, not unfortunately called Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man, because that was the name of the famous episode that was really good and sort of told his history.
Yeah, that was a really good episode.
It was, yeah. But he has a book. I might read that at some point. The actor, not the character. It's not an in-universe thing.
Yeah.
Which would be interesting because there were the C.B. Spender or whatever novels he wrote, right, that never sold well.
I believe
on the
you're
show.
right, yeah.
As part of his characters, he wrote crime novels.
That's right, yeah. And he
Or
kept
detective
hearing
novels,
rejections and stuff from publishers. I remember that now.
Yeah, because that was like the thing he wanted to do to get out of, the business, and it just never worked out. He's like, well, I guess I'll just stay in the government and kill people and aliens then.
Yeah, if you can't do what you love, do what you're good at.
Yeah, I guess so. What else have you been up to this week?
Not a whole lot, really. It's been kind of a, work week for me this week. So geekery has been just a little bit light. But I did finish Voltron, the second season, just yesterday.
Oh, what did you think? Oh, well, the last scene. I kept telling you about that, the very last thing that happens on the show. Was I right?
You were right.
Cool.
It was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I very much liked that whole season, but that last episode was pretty awesome.
Yeah, and just that last line of "Get Prince Lothar,"
Yep.
and you're like, nice, because he was. I don't know where he comes in the normal Voltron show, but he's usually like always around.
Yeah.
So the idea of waiting 2 seasons and then just dropping that on fans, I thought was really neat.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, it seems like they're accomplishing their goal of beating Zartan. So it's like, are we going to get another season? And then with that ending, I'm like, okay, good. We're getting another season.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'll be interesting. Because in the end, like, how do you defend an entire universe with just one big robot? Like, that doesn't make any sense. You'd have to set up some sort of police federation, Green Lantern Corps type of thing.
That would be pretty cool. A whole team of Voltrons.
Well, cool. Why don't you bring us into some news?
Dun 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 dun. News.
That's the news beep of the thing coming. Marvel Comics news. I got one just quick thing that I was scrolling through news. I didn't do a deep dive into news because I know we wanted to talk some of the trailers and stuff. But there's going to be a Hulk and Weapon X. Weapon X is a new comic that's coming in April. It features a team made out of Old Man Logan, Sabretooth, Lady Deathstrike, Domino, and Warpath. And it's a Weapon X Hulk crossover called Weapons of Mutant Destruction, which will feature a villain that is a combination of the Hulk and Wolverine.
Okay.
I kind of like it because it's comic books doing the 5-year-old what if sort of thing. So I like it when comics don't take themselves super seriously and are able to do something fun like this from time to time.
Okay, so it's a Hulk that physically is combined with Wolverine.
I believe so. I think it's a Hulk-Wolverine hybrid monster.
Now, okay. Okay.
It's like those combo toys that people could buy.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah.
Or it could also be like combos, those things that give you diarrhea.
Also, yes. I like those things. The pretzels.
I
with
know. The
pizza
pretzel cheese ones are good.
Flavored, yeah.
Low quality, but tasty.
Yes. Marvel TV, there was a couple Iron Fist featurettes that Netflix dropped.
Sure were.
Yeah, so this show comes out on the 17th, so a week from the day we're recording this. So we always do a Who Is thing before one of these new shows premiere, so next week. So it will the episode will come out a day or two into the show. So if you're willing to hold off for a couple days before devouring all of Iron Fist, we will have an episode out sort of discussing who the character is before we get into the show. So I will not watch it before we record our episode because I don't want to say anything about the show whatsoever. But it is not getting great reviews. I'm not going to let that taint my opinion. From the look of these featurettes, we had one on Danny Rand and then we had one on Colleen Wing. What did you think of these, Liam?
Well, I watched the Danny Rand. I did not watch the Colleen Wing just for time's sake, but I guess it did give me a little bit of a understanding of who the character is. Mm-hmm. I'm not terribly familiar with the Iron Fist. So for that, I guess I'm glad, but I don't feel like it shows much of what we should expect from the show. It's very much an origin, again, without having any sort of compass within Iron Fist. I have no idea who's supposed to be the good guy versus the bad guy. It seems like we've got Madame Cho from the Daredevil series make an appearance here.
Yeah.
So maybe it'll go into a bit more of a villainy situation for her and the Iron Fist. But I don't really know what to expect from it. It doesn't really pop out at me as being like, wow, that looks really good, or like, wow, that looks like crap. I'm going to give it a try. Gonna give it the old college try, but considering the actor who plays Danny Rand also played Loris Tyrell, and Loris Tyrell never had anything to do in that show,
well,
I don't really know what to expect because he never got much of an acting chance either.
He did it. He did have one thing to do.
Well, there was that one thing.
But yeah. Okay. I'm kind of with you. If you had watched the other featurette, I don't know that you would have come out more excited to see it. Basically, they say Colleen Wing owns a dojo and she's short on cash, so she joins a fight club and finds out that she likes it. So that's that scene we see of her doing the cage fight. Is she's like, oh, you have two guys in a cage. Why don't you throw me in there, and if I win, you double the money you give me? And the guy's literally like, you're one crazy chick. And then goes in, and we have the interview with the actor that plays Iron Fist. He's like, Danny's never really seen a woman like her before. And there was even a shot where he's in the dojo and says something about wanting to talk to her master. So I don't know if she actually has a master that trained her, or if it's like he thinks that because she's a woman, she can't own the gym. and then it looks like we're getting a love story between the two of them. That doesn't give me any hope whatsoever. I don't like the idea of a woman who can do martial arts. Whoa, we'd better step back, bro. Now, at the same time, I know that the character of Iron Fist is a throwback to the 70s kung fu movies, just like Power Man was a throwback to the blaxploitation films of the 70s. Yeah, it's very much, it's the white dude who goes to, and I'm putting this in finger quotes because it's sort of an offensive term now, which is the Orient, and he comes back with special abilities. And I mean, this has been a main theme with white male heroes like The Shadow. The Shadow went to the Orient, and he came back with the ability to disappear from men's minds. And
David Carradine.
And David Carradine, yeah. In
the Kung Fu and the Kung Fu, The Legend Continues.
The Legend Continues, that's right. So, yeah, and all this talk of I'm the Iron Fist. The fact that they're calling it The Last Defender is here, or whatever the wording is, that they have to pitch it that way feels the same way as the first Captain America movie was called Captain America: The First Avenger. Like, hey, you're excited for Avengers, you have to see this movie. Where now people almost like Captain America more than Iron Man as far as their favorite character from the MCU, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Just because the later two films were so much better, and they did a really good job with the character. So I'm not terribly excited at this point to see it. I don't feel we need a love story. They've put a love story in every one of these shows to date now, all of their Netflix shows. I don't know that it's necessary. Plus, and we'll talk about this next week, but in the comic books, Iron Fist's girlfriend is Misty Knight, who was introduced in Luke Cage, not Colleen Wing. He teams up with Colleen Wing, but as far as I know, there was never a romantic thing.
Which could be just a sign of the times. You know, back when the comic was being published, it may just not have been something that they thought audiences wanted to see, having like a male white protagonist have a romantic interest in a female Asian woman.
But Misty Knight is black and has always been black in the comics.
I guess they were down with the swirl. Again, maybe that's just one of their remaining prejudices, where it was okay or like cool and hip at the time to like, you know, have him hook up with a black lady as opposed to like, you know, an Asian lady. Maybe they just thought that was like not something people were okay with when it was being published, you know?
I guess, maybe. Or maybe it was just once you combine Power Man and Iron Fist, Misty Knight was part of the deal. But I thought Misty Knight was introduced in Iron Fist. I don't remember now because the episode we did on their history is a ways back now. But in any case, I'm just going to throw this out here. Our poll list for next week, we're going to read the first volume of Immortal Iron Man. I couldn't find it on the Hoopla app. I wanted to try and start reading that. So I'm going to either just hit my comic shop or ComiXology. I will throw a link to, we'll say ComiXology is usually where I go in the show notes. If you want to go, I have no idea what it would cost, probably $15 or so, which is about normal. But that's always why I like physical trades versus digital, unless digital is on sale when it comes to trade paperbacks. If I'm paying the same amount, I want something I can take with me, regardless of whether or not my tablet has an internet connection and power.
Yes. Plus, I like holding it in my hand. You know, like, as big as your phone may be, it's a lot easier to see the artwork when you're looking at a physical trade.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And going panel by panel only works if the comic artist doesn't do crazy things with the layout. Otherwise, that's a thing you want to be able to appreciate.
Yeah.
Moving over to Marvel movie stuff, there was also the full Guardians of the Galaxy trailer.
Indeed, there was.
It was just the extended version, or I guess the longer version of the one that showed during the Super Bowl. I thought it still looks fine.
Yeah.
I didn't quite enjoy this one as much as the Super Bowl one between Rocket and Groot and the bomb.
Yeah, that one definitely, I mean, obviously that was a comedic moment. I liked that trailer more as a whole trailer.
Yeah.
But I did get excited when we finally got a glimpse of Kurt Russell at the end of this one.
Which still bugs me, man, because if the whole point is he's Ego the Living Planet is literally a planet with a goatee, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
Having it as just a dude is a little disappointing, but that's fine.
Yeah.
So I'm still looking forward to the movie.
Yeah, and this one, again, great use of music. That's something that Guardians has done well.
Yeah. And I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but the giant gun that Gamera is using totally looks like the proton cannon that Iron Man uses in all of the Marvel vs. Capcom and just the Marvel fighting games made by Capcom.
Oh, yeah. One last thing about the Guardians of the Galaxy trailer.
Yeah.
If the Guardians of the Galaxy can say douchebag, so can I. And poontang. Poontang, poontang, poontang.
You know I edit this after the fact, right? Like, it doesn't go live.
I know that.
All right, just making sure. The other trailer we got from Marvel was sort of a trailer. It was the Deadpool 2 teaser before the Logan movie, and then Ryan Reynolds released an extended version of this. So it just takes longer for him to change in the phone booth. So basically, here's the setting. He's just walking down the street. He sees an old man getting mugged. Says, "Not in my town," plus curse words. He runs to change in a phone booth to the tune of Superman, the John Williams Superman theme they somehow secured for this. And so they're in and changing, or it shows him changing in the phone booth, and he pushes his, bare ass up against the glass and that sort of thing. In the extended cut, he even makes a phone call, and later on we find out that he had called the costumer who usually helps him get into the suit on set. And then there's also the Stan Lee cameo where he just steps out and Stan Lee goes, "Nice suit!" He goes, "Zip it, Stan Lee!" And then turns and runs, and the guy's, already dead at that point. And Deadpool kicks back and eats his ice cream while talking. And then we get a full synopsis of the Old Man by the Sea novel, except it has jokes and swearing and stuff in it. And I'm not going to read it here, but I have read the full text. Somebody copied it. You can find it online if you want to read it. And it's just that. It's just the full text of it. So it serves as sort of an analogy to Old Man Logan, but it was just completely random and out of place and non sequitur, and that's perfect for Deadpool.
Maybe DC was willing to let them use the score because it's not a proper MCU movie. It's a Fox movie.
I guess. Yeah. But it was still interesting. I'm sure they still had to pay heavily for it.
Oh, I'm sure. But again, good on them for doing it, because that's money they spent that they didn't have to spend.
Just for fun.
Yeah, just for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, in support of a character that people are a fan of.
Yeah. And speaking of Deadpool, we have a domino has been cast. Zazie Beetz, I believe is her name. I have never heard of her, but
No.
I kind of like that I have never heard of her. I don't need it to be an actress that everybody already knows to play Domino.
Yeah.
A last piece of Marvel movie news is we have a synopsis. There was an Entertainment Weekly article that gave us our first glimpse of what Thor's going to look like in Thor Ragnarok, where he's all dressed gladiator style and has a short haircut. But we have a synopsis, and now this synopsis is from the IGN.com article, so I'm guessing there wasn't quotes on it, so it's not straight from Entertainment Weekly. I haven't read this all the way through, so do you mind if I just read through the synopsis that IGN presented us?
Oh, sure.
Okay. The film kicks off with Thor, Chris Hemsworth, trying to find out who manipulated the Avengers at the end of Age of Ultron, and discovering that Loki, Tom Hiddleston, has been impersonating Odin, Anthony Hopkins, who has since gone missing. Due to Loki's terrible leadership, the deadly and imprisoned Hela, Cate Blanchett, manages to escape captivity and successfully fights off Thor, sending him to Sakaar, a planet ruled by the Grandmaster, Jeff Goldblum. With the help of Valkyrie, Tess Thompson, an elite warrior woman, Thor meets the Grandmaster and is then forced to participate in his gladiator matches, which leads to Thor losing much of his hair and his powerful hammer. Thor quickly discovers that Bruce Banner, Mark Ruffalo, has become the most popular gladiator. When the pair finally meet, Ragnarok turns into a buddy road trip movie of sorts, with even Doctor Strange, Benedict Cumberbatch, popping up at a certain point in the film to help locate Odin. Director Taika Waititi revealed to EW he has drawn inspiration from films like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and 48 Hours, specifically in regard to showing off star Chris Hemsworth comedic chops. And that's it.
Okay.
Apparently, Grandmaster rules Sakaar, which is completely not related to the comics at all. The Grandmaster is an elder of the universe, just like the Collector, and totally does his own thing. I've never known him to rule over a planet, but that's fine. It's Goldblum. I'm sure it'll be a ridiculously out there performance, and so is Benicio del Toro's Collector. Super dramatic.
Benicio del Toro loves to do way over the top.
And Goldblum just is naturally.
Yeah.
Or rather, he's subdued to the point of being over the top.
That's true.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there have been stories where Odin was on Earth, wandering around as a human, and I think missing for a while, or amnesiac. Amnesiac? Couldn't member stuff. So that is from the comics on some level. I like that we're going to get introduced to Valkyrie. I'm interested why this doesn't mention the Warriors 3 or Lady Sif. I hope we don't have to get a forced romance with Valkyrie. And obviously it doesn't say any reason why Hulk is for some reason on this planet as a gladiator, where in the comics there's a reason for that. He gets sent away because he's deemed too dangerous. So he gets shipped into space. And the whole planes, trains, and automobiles thing after the gladiator match thing. So I don't know if, I guess it's an action comedy buddy road trip movie. I mean, we were saying with Logan, we want them to try the different sort of genres. You know, Logan was a modern Western. I know Logan isn't in the MCU, or Ant-Man was a heist film. This is going to be a road trip movie.
I just want to see Chris Hemsworth and Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk curled up in a bed together, waking up together in the morning, and having to ask, "Where's your other hand?"
It's stuck between the two pillows.
Those aren't Hulk pillows. You know. Hulk C game last week.
Yeah, it's a great game. Great game. That's such a fantastic movie, and it's a Thanksgiving movie.
Yes.
There's not a lot of good movies out there that are Thanksgiving time.
Very, very few, especially ones that aren't like overwhelmingly saturated with the themes of Thanksgiving. Like the whole thing is set around a Thanksgiving dinner. You know, like this is a lot more of a speaks to the common experience of what it's like to travel for, you know, the holidays. And yeah, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, one of my absolute favorite movies of all time.
Now, does it worry you at all that they're talking about the movie being centered on showing off Chris Hemsworth's comedic chops?
If he has them, then no. I've yet to really kind of see those comedic chops. I mean, it was his idea of his comedic chops, the Doctor Strange stinger, where he's like drinking the beer, because that wasn't really funny to me.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, have you seen, there are 2 little shorts of Thor on Earth with his roommate, and his roommate's just a normal guy.
Okay, no, I haven't seen that.
Okay, I will send you those. You can take a look at those just on your own time. I think he does a good job as Thor of being funny. It's just the idea of if he's the main character, do we want our main character to be a stupid, strong dude? Because he kind of has that a little bit in the Thor movies, but they're clearly more serious, and they have to make him more capable. You know, if you make him a Joey Tribbiani character, that's the reason that Joey as a show didn't work, because you can't take a character who can barely feed himself, you know, because they dumbed him down so much over the seasons of Friends, and then make him the main character in a show. You're like, he doesn't know what's going on. You're like, come on, man. Like, that's not as compelling. So I hope it'll work well. Thor and Hulk have always been sort of comedic foils for one another in the other movies.
That's true.
I look forward to seeing what they come up with. And I imagine there'll probably be a throwaway line about the Hulk getting abducted by aliens or something.
Or Doctor Strange banishing them, you know, like Doctor Strange realizes he's too dangerous and sends him away or something like that.
I'd be okay with that too. Yeah.
And of course that would explain why Doctor Strange has now showed up again, you know, since he knows where the Hulk would have gone or whatever.
And it'll also be interesting to sort of find out where this takes place in our continuity, because everybody cares about continuity and when these movies happen, because it's a shared universe. So if this, with Thor and Hulk, are happening at the same time as Civil War.
Or any of the other movies.
Switching over to DC news with the bop-ba-doo-ba-doo, shibbity-boo,
Giddly-bop-ba-doo.
Yes. I only have one thing. There's a Nightwing movie in development, and it might be directed by Chris McKay, the guy who did Lego Batman. I have no idea if this is meant to take place in the DC Extended Universe or not. I don't know. For all I know, it's animated.
A Lego Nightwing film?
I would assume not. unless they take the Robin from Lego Batman. Because that's Dick Grayson.
There you go.
Yeah. and make that character a Nightwing. I don't know. I'd see it. Whatever. That was it. That's news. Bring us into the topic of the week there, Liam.
Topic of the week.
Our topic of the week this week is comic book distribution. And I hope you brought snacks, because I have a lot of history. I have this massive multi-page thing of notes, and I don't think I'm going to dig into it as deep, but you just let me know if you can follow along with all this, Liam.
Distribution?
Distribution. Or we'll do it, Ken Burns style. And in order to discuss the documentary, or Morgan Freeman, do a Morgan Freeman. I don't know if I can do a good Morgan Freeman.
Direct
In order
market.
to discuss the history.
Comics used to be only available through newsstands, grocery stores, candy stores, and pharmacies. Ordered the same way as magazines. Order a few or many.
Okay. Thank you, Liam. No, so in order to talk about comic book distribution and this whole issue of Diamond Comics distributors and stuff, which is what Void was asking me about, we need to talk about a thing called the direct market. And so Liam is exactly right. Comic books only used to be available through newsstands. A lot of us growing up, we used to get them at the grocery store, or if there was a pharmacy or a candy shop, that's where you got your comics. They'd be in a tall spinner rack. They would say things like, "Hey kids, comics" on it, which is where I got the "Hey kids," etc. thing that I use for absolutely everything these days.
It's true. Everything.
And then in the 1970s, there was sort of this underground comic thing that started happening. So there were small distributors popping up that were only distributing these underground comics. Otherwise, you got them through the same people that delivered your magazines. And the way that worked is you order as many as you want. It's usually a round number, like you order. And the way magazines work in newsstands is whatever you don't sell, you're able to return back to the distributor for credit, and then they recycle them and turn them into the next round of magazines. So, like, if you've ever seen Newsies, and the whole thing the Newsies are upset with is that they have to, what they call, eat whatever papers they don't sell, meaning they're not able to return those newspapers back to the distributor, Weasel. I'm just going to be on a Newsies kick here for a second. So Mr. Weisel, known as Weasel, sells the newspapers to the Newsies from the newspaper, but they have to sell what they buy. If they don't sell it, that's it. And the reason they're upset about it is because with a lot of other like newsstands and stuff, anything they don't sell, they actually get to return, usually just for credit to use on the next thing that they order. So it keeps people ordering things.
Although to be fair, Rob, I think within the world of the Newsies, some of those kids were literally eating those papers.
That's correct. Yeah, it's a good fiber.
Yeah, it's like a cabbage substitute for stew.
That's right. So this is how things went until the 70s, when there was a guy who used to organize comic book conventions way back before comic conventions were a thing, when like there was no internet. So you only knew about it if you knew somebody who knew about it or somehow figured out how to get these fanzines or whatever, or you saw something in a newspaper. Was the only way you'd hear about a convention. And so there was a comic dealer and convention organizer named Phil Seuling, and I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. And he was like, why don't I just do this directly? And he invented the direct market, basically, by going straight to publishers like Marvel and DC and saying, hey, I want to buy straight from you. I don't want to go through a distributor. And the deal that he struck is, unlike these independent distributors and newsstands and stuff like that, this guy would buy them straight from the publishers. They would be non-returnable so that they couldn't. There was a fear by these companies that in the direct market, if you were able to return them, you would buy comics for your store, you would sell them to kids, you would let the kids return them to you like a GameStop thing. They would get to return the comics back to you, and then you return them back to the store, and basically you can get credit that way. If you buy in bulk and you get a low price on your comics, and then you sell them at full price and then return them back to get credit for the next comics, it's basically running a scam. So the whole idea is you're not able to return the comics you buy, but you can customize a specific number of each comic and each issue of each comic that you want. So the benefits of this is you get the books faster from newsstands. The condition comes better and for customers as well, because comic book stores would then bag and board, as we call it, which is the poly mylar bags and the special cardboard backing that doesn't deteriorate the comic books.
Acid-free paper.
Acid-free paper. So the acid-free cardboard inserts. And it created what we call back issue market, the ability to go and find old issues of a comic book in order to fill out your run. Not as important now with the ability to use apps that give you massive back catalogs and you can read every issue. But at the time, there's no way for you to finish reading the story. I have issue 1, and then I have issue 3, 4, and 5. I need to find issue 2, and that's what the direct market allowed. No longer were comics just sent back to be recycled. They were kept in the store, usually for a jacked up price, and then put into their long boxes in the store, their comic boxes. Good Lord, the show's called The Comic Box. The comic boxes in the store. Because before, when you would buy them at like the grocery store and you would get those in those racks, like those racks were made for magazines and books and everything else. So loose comic books would always be bent or damaged, and you had people who wanted to collect them. And this is what allowed them to do it. Plus, you could get more mature content, because things that would not be on a rack in the middle of a candy store or a grocery store could be in what were called specialty shops, the first comic book stores. And then the knowledge. The comic book store owner loves comics, knows comics, and so it became this nerd haven, their own personal bat cave that they could go to and hang out with other comic book geeks. And that was sort of the founding of what's called the direct market. And every once in a while, you can actually go back and you can see a Marvel comic, and next to the barcode on it, it will say direct sales. And that is what that means. It means that did not go through a magazine distributor. It went straight to a comic book store from the publisher.
We should probably also point out that this is one of the reasons why Golden Age comics are so valuable, is because so many of them did not get collected. They just got thrown away or recycled right away. Nobody thought there was a market for them. So that Action Comics #1 with the first appearance of Superman, maybe there were 1 million copies made back then, but most of those copies were destroyed almost immediately.
Right. And if it was a comic that didn't get picked up, the distributors would send them back and it'd get recycled. And then during World War II, there were just recycling pushes. So what's the first thing that's going to go? Well, it's those darn comic books that parents didn't like kids reading because they thought it led to delinquency in kids.
Mm-hmm. And loitering.
Yeah, and so this will come into play eventually. But before we get there, let's go back into the 80s. Now you have companies like Marvel who are putting out titles just for the direct market. Like there was a Dazzler book. They knew it wouldn't sell on newsstands, but they knew that so long as comics couldn't get returned to them, you could take a chance on a book because comic shops will buy them because it's something new for them to pitch to their customers, and so you can still make some profit even if it's not a lot. So this is why in the 80s and into the 90s, you got a bunch of different like little mini-series featuring different characters and stuff like that. It's because there was now comic shops where people could go and find them instead of just a Batman and a Superman that you would find in your local grocery store or newsstand. With me so far?
Yes, with you so far.
Did you just leave to like get a snack?
No, I was watching a Forrest Gump meme on Facebook.
Well, I'm glad you're paying attention.
Well, you had a lot to say, and I'm letting you say it all.
Yeah, and I'm not done yet.
Yep.
Because now we get into Diamond Comic Distributors. Small distributors were coming and going, but this one started growing. And they were a retailer originally, but then the owner went and he bought warehouses that went out of sale. So they called themselves Diamond after Marvel had an imprint at the time of non-returnable comic books when they were getting into the direct market. They just called them Diamond. There was a little diamond there on the cover. So they called themselves Diamond Comic Distributors. And the most distributors we ever had was like 20 in the United States. A lot of them had multiple warehouses. They buy product from Marvel and DC, and then they would sell to the retail shops, or some people would actually buy from these big distributors and be like a mini distributor that would then sell to shops.
Or those like dirty kids that would run around in the urban areas with the big stack of comics, just trying to bark attention to them. The comic-keys.
That I was unaware that this was a thing that existed, but I'm going to say yes. I would now like a Netflix original series based on the comic-keys.
Yes, absolutely. And it might be better than the Iron Fist.
And it would probably be better than the Iron Fist. So these distributors were getting bigger and doing better because the comics industry was growing, and Marvel and DC were giving better terms to them because they could buy larger quantities. And this led to partially the 90s boom, where we had more comic shops. You had like sports memorabilia shops or people that sold trading cards and baseball cards and stuff.
Can I put a pin?
Put a pin in it. What do you got?
Okay, so when I was, a kid, I used to collect baseball cards. And there was a store, Sport Card Emporium in Golden Valley. And they got into whatever fad would come in next. So, sure enough, they got into the comic book fad, of course, and the Beanie Baby fad, and every, collectible card game fad. But while they had comic books, I actually went there and got the, I think it's Green Lantern issue 56, the one that's the first appearance of Guy Gardner.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I did so by taking it out of the overpriced bag they had it in and putting it in a much more reasonably priced bag that a different comic book was in. And
so you're admitting to being a thief. You're a thief. You're a criminal, is what you're saying.
I paid for the thing, just not the pay that they wanted for it. And they're out of business now, so it doesn't really matter.
So it's your fault. You're saying that one comic purchase you did, you put a store completely out of business.
Yep.
Those owners probably had kids to feed.
It's true. I
to
threw
put through college.
Thousands of dollars away on customizable cards, and they squandered every dollar of that. But when it came down to it, and they really needed it, and I wasn't there for them.
They were 50 cents short of rent.
Yep.
And they lost the lease.
They probably had to turn to dark things to be able to pay the bills,
Yeah.
Selling their organs.
That's right. Like I said, they haven't even heard from their oldest child.
Yeah.
Their oldest child disappeared somewhere.
It's true.
Into the Orient. There's a theory he might come back one day as the Iron Fist. Thank you. Can I continue?
Yeah.
Wonderful. So at this point in the 90s, with the comic book distributor wars, we have two major distributors, Diamond and Capital City. Each one has about 20 warehouses spread out across the country. Other smaller competitors, there's a couple that still stick around. There's one in particular that we will get to. Where is it? I thought I put their name. Oh, Heroes World is sort of the number 3, so they're still around. But otherwise, you have Diamond and Capital City, and they are buying out their competition. So you're basically getting what would that be? Like the Comcast and Time Warner cable, basically, for those of us that are in towns that you only get 2 options for cable, and then they split up their territories so you don't get a choice. You have Diamond and Capital. And then in the mid-90s, the comic industry starts imploding. People realize that you can't buy 18 different variant covers and actually make money off of them. That the fact that there are millions of these comics being printed and there is no return market, keep in mind. You cannot return the ones you don't sell. So there are literally millions of comic books of issues of like X-Men 1 being printed. Even though there's, 6 different covers, it doesn't matter. They're still not nearly as rare or as valuable as, say, an Action Comics number 1. So you have people who are buying comics for investment. And this leads to a lot of issues. Closing of warehouses, comic companies are suffering, small publishers are having issues staying in business. Competitors to Diamond and Capital City, these distributors, are also going out of business. And now you have Heroes World, the number 3 distributor, gets bought by Marvel Comics. In other words, Marvel Comics says that they're going to completely cut out the distributors. Marvel is distributing its own books. Because of this, I'm just going to call it a dick move by Marvel, who ended up declaring bankruptcy in the 90s. You have other distributors like Diamond and Capital City that seek to get exclusive deals now that they aren't carrying as much of Marvel's business. And Diamond, again, being gutsy, outbids Capital City and has an exclusive distribution deal with DC, Image, Dark Horse, and other ones. Meaning Capital City now cannot distribute any of the main books. The books, all the characters that you guys out there have ever heard of probably, was all going through Diamond, and it's all Marvel's fault, is where we're going with this. We'll keep this in mind in case we don't like Iron Fist. We'll blame Marvel again.
Yeah.
So now Diamond starts buying up others. Capital City, bankrupt, gets bought out by Diamond. Marvel, seeing the writing on the wall, realizes that doing their own distribution isn't doing so well. They signed with Diamond. So now, in 1996, 1997, Diamond has the exclusive rights to just about everything that you know about. And now we go to the courts. 1997, there's an antitrust litigation against Diamond. The Justice Department does an investigation for 3 years, and in November of 2000, they just close the investigation and decide that no action is necessary. Why? Because even though it was decided by the U.S. Justice Department that they do indeed have a monopoly in North America on comic books, or the comic book distribution market, they don't care. Because it's not a monopoly on book distribution, it's just a subsect comic books. So one company is now putting out absolutely everything until graphic novels, and trade paperbacks come along in Barnes & Noble, and I guess Borders, when Borders was a thing.
I remember Borders.
Yeah, right? It was a fine store.
I worked there.
There you go.
I used to read comic books while I was working there. I read most of Hellboy while I was working there.
So now you understand.
Yes.
So now, through book distributors, you could go to most major bookstores and find comics. This was ridiculous. Until Diamond creates Diamond Book Distributors, which distributes graphic novels and trades to Barnes & Noble, Amazon. Usually if you're buying comics through Amazon, it'll probably say it's through Diamond. They created Diamond UK. They created a company called Alliance Games Distributors, which does RPGs. And now the same owner of Diamond also has Gemstone Publishing. He owns EC Comics, which were the old horror comics back in the day. So they're reprinting the old horror comics. Disney Comics is owned by them. And the Overstreet Comic Book Price Guide is the same guy that owns all of this stuff. So that's kind of where we're at today. Diamond is the ruler. They've been found to be a monopoly. And the big if now is the companies themselves are getting into distributing comics to you digitally and cutting out Diamond. And I hope that this is the reason why you can do like this subscription service, or sometimes on ComiXology, they'll run half off sales and that sort of thing. The downside of the new popularity of digital comics is the slow elimination of the back issue market. Because comic shops are now buying less comics, fewer people are buying comics from shops. It's kind of like your video stores going out of business. You know, you can still get it from like a Redbox, but we're never going to have a Redbox for comic books. You're never going to be able to go and buy physical comics. So it seems like because there's a monopoly held by Diamond and everyone's trying to get away from that, that might lead to us maybe only having trades and then digital issues, and then they only publish in a trade format, which I guess I'm okay with, but long boxers are sort of going the way of the dinosaur these days.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I myself mostly talk about comics that I get to read via an app free from my library because I am too lazy to drive the 3 minutes to my library and look at their physical collection of trades. So I'm just as guilty as everybody else. Let's talk the problems with this. Let's talk the problems with this monopoly. Basically, it gives Diamond the ability to be like Target or Walmart in that, say, an album cover or music that has lyrics that they don't like. If Walmart goes back to the music distributor, which then goes back to the record label, and they say, hey, we don't like your comic, we're not going to put it in our stores. They sell so many. Like Walmart is like the number one place that people buy physical music. And obviously that's shrunk now as digital has grown. But they used to say, we don't like your album cover. And it would have to get changed regardless of what the label wants, the artist wants, the distributors want. It didn't matter because Walmart is the end. And they're like, we don't want that associated with us, or we don't like your lyrics. You need to give us the censored version of albums, which is why those exist now. Ugh. They don't like something, they do it. And it happened where Diamond didn't want to carry the book Miracle Man, which was being written by Alan Moore, I believe, at the time, in the 1980s, because it was too graphic. They were accused of censoring, and it's happened a couple times over the years. But eventually they backed down, and it led to, if you've ever seen this in your local comic shop, sometimes there's a little jar or something that says it's for the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. It's a First Amendment advocacy group that was partially created or backed by DC Comics and Diamond after Diamond got all of this flack for supposedly trying to censor books. And it's just money to help go towards creators and stuff being able to do what they want. And I guess lobbying money to get people to not go against comic books. And then the other issue that Diamond has had is they've been accused of bullying publishers and discriminating against smaller publishers. So they'll demand that a publisher, sell them for better prices or for a better deal, and then not being willing to carry small publishers because they're not going to sell as many because it's an unknown, which is why you're not seeing as much of the small publisher stuff. Like you talked about, you had, what was the comic that you really liked that was super black humor?
Arsenic Lullabies.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's not a thing you would normally find. You're not going to find it in your Barnes & Noble.
No, that's, it's like, I think it was like AAA publishing or something like that back in the day. I'll have to look at it. But yeah, it was a very Midwest-centric comic. I only found out about it because I went to a comic book convention and they had their booth there, and I just happened to see their art and their stuff, and I loved it. And they would keep coming to the local convention, so every 6 months or a year I'd get to run into the guys again and then like pick up a bunch of new stuff of theirs, because I think I found maybe one issue at the Hot Comics in New Hope, and this was probably the late 90s, early 2000s. So I only found like a few issues there, but then it was just going to the convention, and they're still going. I just this last fall was at the big convention that comes to the state fairgrounds, and they had a booth there, and I bought a whole bunch of their stuff. So yeah, it's hard to find, but it's really wonderful when you can find a local comic that you can really dig on.
Yeah, and so if there's anything to be learned from this giant history lesson, it's that Diamond isn't necessarily the bad guy. Companies grow, they make more money. That's what companies do. But it's important for us to realize that if you can go to a small local con like the ones we have here, supporting local artists, if you find some local comics, I mean, give it a shot. Like I said, I'm very frugal, but whenever I go to a convention, I always bring at least $20 or something that I can just throw the way, or maybe $40 that I can give to creators. And I found some really good comics that way. There's like a book called Wonder Boy, and I got to meet the creator and talk to him for a while, and that's really cool because you're not going to get picked up by Diamond. If you and I get together and make a comic book, Diamond is not going to start putting it in stores around the country.
Oh, no. Yeah, Arsenic Lullabies, one of the main characters is a guy who's been cursed by a witch doctor to have a voodoo mask on his head and has to perform acts of revenge for people in order to prevent the curse from consuming him. And his main legion is zombie fetuses. So
not a thing that you would normally see elsewhere. And there are little ones, because there's Oni Press, there's slave labor graphics that put out Jonan Vasquez's early stuff like Squee and Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. Mm-hmm. To find those real gems, that's kind of what you have to do. But
Squee, also so wonderful. I love Squee.
Yeah, Squee was a really good book. You can find it in like Hot Topic.
Yeah.
Or you used to be able to find it in Hot Topic. They've changed a bit over the years. I mean, it's still a Hot Topic, so I'm never going to pretend it wasn't exactly what it was. But they used to carry some indie comics and stuff like that. But that's it. Like, this isn't a out with a bang sort of episode. I just wanted to cover that distribution, give you guys a peek behind the comic book industry and sort of how it goes. So we are going to close the comic box for now with a bop-a-doo-doo-da-da-doo.
Squiddly-bop-a-doop-a-doo.
Da-ba-ba-doom-ba-da-bow.
Da-da-dee-dee-dee-dee-doo.
And the comic box is now closed. I suppose there should be like an official proclamation. The comic box has been closed. So that is it for this week, guys. Don't forget, next week we're going to read the Immortal Iron Fist and give you guys a look into who exactly Danny Rand is in the proper Marvel 616 comic book universe. As always, if you have questions, suggestions, anything you guys want to send us, you can reach us by email at thecomicboxpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at ComicBoxCast. You can join us and the rest of our geeks at our subreddit, which is reddit.com/r/geektogeekcast. Speaking of, this is part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. You can go to geektogeekcast.net and sign up for updates on all of our Geek to Geek shows. And Liam's on Facebook.
Boom.
You should really go on, like, Twitter. Like, I know you don't have a lot to do, but at the very least, then you can join in the conversation. Or you know what? I'll give you access to the Comic Box podcast Twitter.
I will only consent to using Twitter under the condition that I never use the phrase hashtag.
No, but you add a hashtag, because that's how people find you, is
I'm
they
going to
search
say,
for...
look for #Liam on Twitter. That's what
fine.
Mine would be. It wouldn't be hashtag. It would be £, because that's what it is. Yeah. It's a £.
No, I'm with you. When I first joined Twitter, my big campaign was
Rob. It's a £.
When I first joined Twitter, my whole campaign was hash browns, not hashtags.
I like it.
It didn't catch on, unfortunately.
That's too bad. I like it.
Thank you.
I also like hash browns.
Yeah, right? Hash browns are wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. That's it.
Bye, kids.